So the way it played out over the weekend, it seemed fairly clear-cut considering Ohio State's loss was egregious and Oklahoma was going to gain that advantage of beating Texas, and so that they would hold their spot. Of course, the factor came into play, possibly with some people looking in that Georgia might sneak out with a spot based on their performance, not the result, but the performance against Alabama, and Clemson and Notre Dame safe in the clubhouse. Your thoughts about the college football playoff?
Yeah, and I think I've really never had a gripe with the four that they've included in all the years they've been doing. I think they've done a very good job. I think folks generally like to debate it because it's controversy and it's college football. It's fun. Why not? But I think they did a good job. I think what generates the debate a little bit is I think they've done a really poor job in defining their goal. When they say the four best teams, it's extremely subjective. And I think even if you look at the advanced stats, they have Georgia over Notre Dame. But I don't think it makes any sense to put a two-loss team that didn't win their conference over an undefeated team that's an independent. It makes no sense. So I think they'd be better off if they said what they mean, because what they do is they pick the four most deserving teams and then they seed them based on how good they think they are. At least that's what I think they did this year. I would have loved for Alabama last year to not be the 4 seed because I felt like people didn't believe they were the 4th best team and Clemson was the 1 and we had to play the eventual national champion. Would have much preferred to not to play them. This year, well, let me kind of maybe go back on what I was saying before, because this year I think I'd rather play Notre Dame than Oklahoma, and we're the 2 seed. So it seems that maybe Notre Dame's more deserving, but I think a lot of people think Oklahoma's better, and I'm kind of glad that we're playing Notre Dame. So what do you think of that?
Well, I think I can totally agree with what you're saying about the wrestling match between most deserving or the teams that earned it versus the teams that are what at least most people think are the best. So, yes. Do I believe that Georgia is a better football team than Notre Dame? I do. If they played tomorrow and I had to put a substantial amount of money on the game, I would throw it on Georgia, and it would take me about 4 seconds to make that decision. Not that I would be surprised if Notre Dame won the game. I wouldn't be surprised, but I would think Georgia would win that game 7 out of 10 times, and they would win the game by a touchdown. But certainly you've got to reward the team that went undefeated over the 2-loss team. And even if Georgia lost 1 game and didn't win the SEC, you would think Notre Dame would get the nod over the Georgia team. So that's where they are a bit inconsistent. And we never heard that best teams argument really until last year. It seemed to become front and center prominent because they wanted to knock out some conference champions. I have issue with that. They do a remarkable job considering the format. The format is you've got 5 conferences, and then you have some other worthy teams, and then especially Notre Dame getting into the mix at the end of the season for the first time, that it makes it virtually impossible to have a clear-cut 4. I had some issue with the number of seasons in the past, but this is really the first one, along with 2015, that I could say I had no issue, and I knew that I would have no issue. And I told people on here that wanted me to rant and rave that I wasn't going to, because Ohio State, Oklahoma, I had valid arguments for both of them. And I can understand in this format, if it was an objective format, throw out a 29-point loss versus a 1-point loss. It makes no difference to me in an objective format like the NFL playoffs. But in this format, they have to weigh the 29-point loss. And therefore, that's what generally broke the tie. Otherwise, I thought Ohio State had a better resume. And people seem to ask me, even though I went through a video in which I said, okay, I looked at it a certain way and I came up with 4 teams. And then I looked at it another way and I came up with different teams. Then I went the other direction and I came up with a slightly different format. And then at the end, I just said, if my life was on the line and I had to pick 4 teams to play in a playoff, who would they be? And they would be in order: Alabama, Georgia, Clemson, Ohio State. Those would be the 4 teams that I think are the most talented and capable on the field.
Right, but that's not relevant, because if it was, why play all the games to determine who deserves to go in?
Well,
So
we have to play the games. We have to play the games to determine who we think are the best. I wouldn't have been able to
fair
say
point.
if I wouldn't have watched games play.
Fair point. I guess my point is it just feels wrong. It's not really in the essence of American sports to say, hey, they played really good, they lost, but I think they're better, and I don't care that they actually won or lost. And that's kind of like, in European
You
soccer.
sound like me now, Ryan. You sound like me, the guy that wants to go to the resume and the track record.
I know it's not a good position to be in, is it?